think we're live now. How's it going, everyone? So I got Paul. He's been on the channel a couple of times doing streams. We kind of just, built stuff together on previous streams. But in this stream, he wants to give a presentation and also kind of have like an open dialogue about Strappy, which is the company that he works at. And I think he has some really good information. I've used Strappy before a couple of times, and I think it is a good way to just build out like that have backend functionality without having to put all that effort into building the backend. But yeah, welcome, Paul. Also, he has a coding channel, so be sure to give yourself a shout out.
Yeah. No, thanks, Cody. Always awesome. Love everything you do here on the channel. And yes, I do have a channel called Coding After 30. And the reason why I kept going and never gave up is just the encouragement from Cody. What's awesome that a lot of you don't know is when my channel, it's still fairly small, but even when it was like the smallest it could possibly be, Cody was just like, hey, you're doing cool things here. Let's do a stream together. So he was really good at, helping to encourage me to keep things going. So that's pretty awesome and good to see you here again. And welcome to all of you awesome folks that are joining. And if you have any questions at any given time, of course, you could ask them in the comments, and don't be shy, say hello. And what I wanted to do today is I wanted to talk about Strappy, which is a headless CMS. I like it. I do currently work at Strappy, but I've been using Strappy previously before getting hired there, and I do want to share my reasons why. And I want to do this quick presentation why I like to use Next.js with Strappy. And so why Strappy? Don't you know you can build a full stack app with Next.js? And yes, you can. I believe that Next.js is an awesome framework, but it could have a pretty significant learning curve, especially if you're starting to focus on some of the backend aspects of it. And so what I'm going to cover is tell you a little bit about me, why I chose Strappy, show you some examples of Next.js Strappy together, and more importantly, just want to demo some projects so we could all have a discussion around the code. And then I want to talk about this idea of like building in public. And so I have this picture here for a reason, because like I'm not like some 10x developer. I'm some random dude who switched careers late in life into coding. I think I started learning to code around 35. I got my first job at 39, and now I'm 43. So I've been working in the industry for about 4 years. And so I like to kind of talk about things that kind of help to remove roadblocks to actually have you build things. And so, like I said, not an expert, switched careers in my late 30s, given advice on YouTube. And my big goal is I just want to try ideas and bring them to life. And maybe one day I'll make a successful SaaS product. And yeah, I still suck at TypeScript, but that's a whole different conversation. So why Strappy? So Strappy allows you to create this backend admin area where you're able to easily manage your content. And one of the reasons, I'll just share a quick personal story about how I discovered Strappy. So when I was learning to code, I had a really hard time with Frontend, especially when starting out. And I didn't even, the concept of backend made no sense to me, but I still wanted to make full stack applications. And so I would, at the time, use React as my front end. And then for backend, I discovered this amazing headless CMS called Strappy that allowed me to actually set up functional API literally in minutes to allow me to focus more on building things with front end. And what was awesome from there, my second dev job, I got hired at this financial company where they were building a lot of stuff with Python, but they wanted to create a new product, but they couldn't take their current engineers and devote their time to building out this new product because they're too busy maintaining what they already had. And so I said, hey, let me create a POC as a front-end developer, and I'll use Strappy as a backend. This way you could kind of get a feel of what the product could be. So I was able to quickly bootstrap this POC using React on the front end and Strappy on the back end to a point where they're like, oh, this actually could work. And so we ended up creating a minimal viable product that allowed me as like solo developer with one designer that helped to create the UI, built something really quickly that we were able to get alpha users to start using the product. And it really got excitement. And when my boss saw that, hey, this is an actual product that people want to use, we're getting a lot of good feedback, he actually ended up hiring more JavaScript developers, and which is kind of cool because, Strappy is powered by Node. And so if you know JavaScript, you could customize Strappy to your heart's desire. So that's when I really saw the power of Strappy, is because it allowed me to go as a single man team to get more stuff done. And I think for prototyping, building things fast, or actually just building a whole SaaS with a Strapi backend, that's kind of cool. And so those are the benefits. It's easy to get started, faster development time, which leads to faster to market. It does reduce cost, and I'll mention a cool example that I found in just a minute. And I like this concept of working in parallel, because as a developer, focus on building the site, building the product. You don't want to think about content and managing content. And so when you have instance of Strapi, you could have your content editors already working from the admin UI that comes with it, adding content, and all you're working on is actually just consuming that content in the website that you're building. And like I said, you get a full admin panel, and it's highly customizable, which we'll look at some examples. And it's really easy to get started. You just run npx create Strapi app at latest, and you're going to have your project, and it's really quick. It takes a couple of minutes. So I skipped the slide here. So here's an example that I first wanted to share with you. It's a basic blogging website, which is built with Next.js and with Strapi. And if anybody was interested in trying it out, if I'll share the link here. But it's a great example of finding Strapi and Next.js, and it's doing pretty good. We got 633 stars. I'll put it in the chat here for anyone that's interested. But anyway, we'll go with the presentation because I want to get through this first. So then we have more time just looking at the code. And I was trying to put in the chat, but I guess I need to connect my YouTube. So I'll throw it in private chat for you, Cody, if you could reshare. And so basically, what you're able to do, you're able to create all your collection types and content types within your Strapi area. And actually, let me back up a little bit. I clicked in the wrong slides. So just to kind of show you how this basic architecture looks like, I have my Next.js application, and this is what the users interact with. So they consume the Next.js application, and then all the data is coming from my Strapi, and it could either be self-hosted, so you could use something like Heroku, Render, DigitalOcean, or we also have a Strapi Cloud instance if this is something that makes sense to you. And so Strapi, all your content managers interact with Strapi to manage the data, and Strapi interacts with the database to save that data. What's awesome about Strapi is that you might have multiple things. Maybe you have a Next.js website that serves your clients, but maybe you have a mobile app, maybe you have another app, and Strapi allows you to consume that content on any channel that you want. Like if you, for instance, needed to power your refrigerator with your content, you could do it. And so I still really like this idea of having separate front end and separate API. And I don't know if all of you have this problem. I think I jump frameworks like crazy. Like one day I was like, let me do Astro, let me do Remix, let me do Next. And what's awesome, all those things could be powered with that same instance of Strapi. So I don't have to recreate my backend. So to me, that's a huge plus. And here's a cool example of Strapi in the wild. There's this website, PostHug, and they're having like very interesting use case. They're not using Next.js for their front end. They're using Gatsby. And their majority of their blog posts are actually stored on GitHub, but they still have parts of their website powered with Strapi. And the way they're integrating Strapi is, I know it's hard to see here, but they're using it to manage the user accounts. So when a user signs up to their website, all of that is stored in Strapi. They're also managing their content sorting and filtering with Strapi. And they're also managing the whole forum, like their questions. Let me see if I have their site here somewhere. PostHug. Yeah, so this is like the PostHug website. All of their forum, all their questions, all their conversations, all that data is stored in Strapi. So what I want to showcase here is that you could have a whole project built in Strapi and your favorite framework, or you could use Strapi for certain parts that you want to handle in your project, which is, I think, kind of cool, the flexibility you get. And so let's talk about this homepage example, and we'll definitely look at stuff on code and ask questions about it. But you could see this is the front end of our website, and here I'll show you. I actually have this hosted. Already on Vercel. So this is the homepage that you see here, and all of this content is coming from the Strapi dashboard. And what's awesome, if I needed to adjust any of this content, I don't have to ask a developer to do this in code. Folks could do it from their Strappy admin. And so the way we have this basic example, you have this admin panel. In this example, we're looking at the page where you have your content that's broken into sections, which are consistent of Strappy components. And in my Next.js application, I have this basic main index route, which will basically get the home page. And I have this section renderer that I'm going to discuss in just a second to kind of give you an example of how it works. And if you're looking at how I'm getting my page here, I have get page by slug. This is nothing complicated. It's just making a fetch request using fetch in Next.js to get my data from my API. But the magic, like I said, happens from this content section renderer. And it's, again, nothing complex. It basically, in my Strapi application, I created a couple of components like the hero section, like the testimonial page, the pricing page, the form, the features. And in my Next.js application, I created kind of like components. My brain is freezing right now, so I can't think of the word, that reflect the same components in Strapi. So if I have a hero component Strapi, I have a React equivalent component in my Next.js application. And so when I have these different components in my Strapi admin area, I'm able to, or the content editor is able to select what components they want to work or use, add their content. As a developer, I don't care what they do, because implementation through the section renderer, where it'll basically check the response and it'll check which components are you returning. And if that component exists, please render it on the page. So I like this separation of concern, whereas the developer, I just work on developing, and the content editors or marketers or whoever is managing the content of the website, they could focus on managing the content. And let me show you this project quickly live. And if you have any questions around it, you could ask. So let me do it here. CD web dev Cody is awesome. It's an actual folder on my computer. I just want to say. And let's start with I can't type, Next.js corporate starter. And I'm gonna do yarn dev. And let's give it a minute to start. And so if we take a look at the local host, here we have like the front end. We have our navigation on top. We have our logo here. We have our navigation on the bottom. We have the social links here, and we have our blog. And again, this is running locally, so it might be a little bit slow here for me. And we have our different blog posts, which, you get the idea. It's the blog section. But let's take a look at how this is represented in Strapi. And so here, I always have issues remembering my passwords, so hopefully, I'll remember it. Paul Bratzlavsky. One issue I found out when I speak and try to type, it just breaks my brain. I don't know if anybody else has that experience. So here we are in the Strapi admin. So when you start, you get this amazing admin area. And notice I already have our collection types. So collection types could be anything that you have gonna many things off, like articles, authors, categories, products, whatever you want. And so we have our articles. If we take a look at our articles, this is where you manage your article. And remember how I talked about these different components? You could create these component blocks that your editor could decide which ones they want to use. So they don't have to use all of them, or they could use they want. We have our authors, we have our categories, and so on. And the one thing that I want to show you here, just quickly in our application, notice that we have on our homepage, we have our top navigation, our bottom navigation. So you're actually able to store all that stuff in Strapi. So if you take a look at global, I have my metadata, I have my favicon, I have my navbar, this is for the top navbar. And then I have my footer, which has the bottom footer bar. So you're able to manage all your content from your website. So if somebody wanted to add another link to the navigation, they could just add it here. And I'm just going to say test and test. And if I save here and I go back into my application, like the demo effect sometimes is real, but boom, right there, it's test. So notice how I'm able to easily manage my front end application from my Strapi admin panel. So as a developer, I don't have to physically go in here. And the way this is created, you know, I think it gives you like more flexibility. As a developer, you don't have to worry about this stuff. You just actually worry about building your project. And if we take a look at this home in our Strapi application, we have this thing called pages, collection type, and we have our about page, we have our home page. So I could go in the home page and kind of show you all the items here are built from the Strapi components, which also have a Next.js equivalent. And so whenever someone adds, let's say, another hero section, and they'll add stuff here, test. Let's do, I'm just going to do test for everything because I don't want to type and talk too much. And let's add an image. Let's add this, finish. So let's hit save. And so I just added another hero block. If I go back to my application, refresh, and if this is like, again, Next.js, you could have it statically built. You could actually add a hook in Strapi. Whenever you update something, it could redeploy your application. I don't have to do that here. And I know this doesn't look that great for now, but I just want to show you, here's that hero section that I just dynamically added. And if I'm not happy with it, I could go into my application, delete it, click save, go back into Remix here, and it'll be all set. And actually, the reason why this is here is because it's cached, so it needs to be redeployed. But because I'm locally, I would have to just restart my server. But if you're in Strapi and your project is production, which is actually a good point here, under settings, you're able to go into webhooks, and you could create a webhook that could say, hey, if something updates or something changes, go ahead and redeploy my Next.js application. And so I don't want to talk too much because I do want to have an open discussion. I do want to showcase just one thing, a couple of things here. One cool thing about Strapi, and the only reason I'm going to like show this because I'm very proud of this thing I built, because I feel like development is a challenge for me. But if there's something that doesn't exist in Strapi, and like for instance, you're like, I wish Strapi had this functionality that doesn't exist. You could actually customize Strapi in many ways, but you could also customize it by creating plugins. So here I created a plugin called AI Embeddings, which will allow me to take all my content that I have here in Strapi and create text embeddings with OpenAI, which creates this amazing chatbot where now I'm able to ask questions around my content to my chatbot, and it will return like the conversation as well as the links to that content. And this kind of shows how, you go ahead and you create an embedding, you add your text and so on. And we don't have to talk too much about this plugin, but here's the cool thing. So I have my Next.js application, right, that consumes my Strapi app. I have my Strapi app that has that plugin for OpenAI embeddings chatbot. I could use it within Strapi, but I also exposed endpoints that I'm able to call from my Next.js. So if I want my chatbot to exist in Next.js application, I could easily consume those endpoints. Or if I have a mobile phone or any other website where I want to integrate those chatbot features, I just use those endpoints on any one of those channels. And I think that's kind of cool and pretty flexible. And a few things that I want to show before I want to show you the build in public projects. Strapi, you could deploy it, like I said, self-hosting. So you could use something like Render, Heroku. You could deploy it on DigitalOcean. But we also have this Strapi Cloud, which is more tuned for like pro users, like small businesses, marketing agencies that are building websites. This is a paid service, but you could try it for free for 14 days. So if I were to log in, I'm just going to show you a quick example here. Paul, not from Strapi. That sounds like a good email. And when you enter your Strapi Cloud, the cool benefit here, if you have multiple projects, this is a great way to manage all your projects for your clients from one place. And if I wanted to create a project, it's like fairly straightforward. You click create. You are able to try it out without a credit card. You could click create my project, it kind of shows you all the different plans that we have. And what's cool is like, I don't have a Strappy project. Like I haven't built one yet. You could actually just use a template that's going to create a very simple block here. You do have to point to your repository here that you have. And when you click create repository, it's going to go ahead and create a repository for you in your GitHub account with this template and deploy to cloud. So you could literally try it out and see how it works. 14 days free, but you don't have to use Strappy Cloud. You could do it as self-hosted, but I just wanted to show you all the different options that we have available. But more importantly, I do want to talk about and bring coding in and talk about actual code and stuff. So let me talk about this last thing that I'm doing, and so we could have more of a discussion and open stuff. So I'm a big proponent of build in public. I know Cody did an amazing hackathon a while back, building a thing with the community, because I think it's a great way to meet new developers, especially someone who's new starting out. One of the things people have a tendency is being stuck in tutorial hell, and they're very hesitant about trying to build something together. But as developers, we know that if you're not building things from scratch, struggling, failing, it's actually really hard to develop a skill where you feel comfortable that you actually know what you're doing. And so I really love this idea of building in public, because I love this saying, like, alone you go fast, but together you could go far. And so the reason why I love building in public, because it's community learning, you get feedback and improvements. It's cool to share your knowledge, collaboration, personal growth. Also, that's a great way to build a portfolio for yourself, especially if you're starting out, and it's great for networking. So I have this project called Next.js Build in Public, and yes, we're using Strappy and Next.js, and it's still going on. So if anybody wanted to participate, jump in. Regardless if you're a brand new developer, or let's say you're a better developer than I am, please jump in, do some PR reviews and give me some good feedback. But I'm quickly going to show you here. This is let me close these unnecessary things here that we already talked about.
Hey, do you want to share that? Do you want to share that GitHub link?
Yeah, definitely. Let me do that here. Let me go to my GitHub. Thank you. Next.js Build in Public, and this is going to keep happening until this is deployed, and until like this Build in Public part is going to just keep going. So don't feel like you're going to be late. If you see this stream and you're just like, I don't know if it's still going. It's still going on. It's still going. So this is already deployed on Vercel, and it's still in the alpha phase. I also have the backend deployed in Strappy Cloud to manage the content, but I'm going to show it, but you don't have to. You could use, you could self-host it, or you could deploy it locally. Here's the website here. And so what I'm trying to do, like, I'm trying to build this website similar to meetup.org, but I want it to be like free. And I want it to be like based on, like, for instance, I live in Austin, Texas, and I just want to have a website that's just specific to Austin, Texas, just to specific to a certain niche. So the idea, the goal, and this is not ready yet, but the goal is to create a website that allows you to share your local events. For instance, you could click on the event. It's going to take you to the page to show the details of the event, who the user who added it, this feature. We also have, ability to log in or register if you create a new account. Once you logged in, you have your dashboard where you have your events, and you could manage your events. For instance, like if I have a draft, I could either archive it, or I could publish it, or I could edit the event, which takes you to this UI. And the reason what's interesting here, remember in the first demo project I showed you, we really focused on managing content from Strappy admin, which you can do. But if you need a more of a custom solution, or you want to just restrict users to be able to do certain things right from your front end of your application, you could do that as well. So here, I have my Strappy dashboard for, like, if you will, like, super admin use, but I have this Next.js dashboard for people to be able to manage and, add and update their content. And so I think that's like a cool use case. So without any ado, like let me just kind of open this project in my code editor, and we could maybe have a discussion around, or if you have any questions about how I implemented certain features with Next14. And yeah, I'd love to have like Cody's feedback to kind of talk about like what he's been learning with Next14 and what are the best practices and stuff like that. So let me just fire this project up. Actually, let me cd Next.js. You know what's hilarious? A lot of people say like, Paul, you're like so good talking and everything else. I am so nervous every time I do live streams. Like people can't tell, but dude, I'm gonna take a nap after I'm done. But let me open this in code, and let me and we'll come back
Yeah, I
to
mean,
this in
I've made like 700, 800 videos. And I still get sometimes nervous on a live stream. I don't know why. I mean, there's only like 60 people watching right now, but it's still like, oh no, people are listening to what I'm saying. I gotta make
I
sure I
know
do
they're gonna
everything
judge
properly.
me. They're gonna judge me. They're gonna see that I'm an imposter. I still get that all the time, by the way.
I mean, you've been to conferences, so you got that leg up on me. I have never been to a conference
Dude,
before, spoke at a
dude,
conference, so that's great.
oh, dude, I don't know how I didn't pass out on stage. So yeah, so let me just quickly go to localhost 300 here. So this is my Eventler project running locally, and I would love to have anybody that's interested to contribute to do it. And let me just close these unnecessary windows that we don't need anymore. Content manager, localhost. I might have to re-log in here. Yeah, and so previously to the other example that I showed, notice how I only have the events here and I have the users here. That's basically what this is managing. It's also managing my global settings like the navigation that you see here on top. Similar as I showed before, like if I needed to change something, like I'm able to easily do it here. So like I'll add like, let's say there's like about link and it's going to navigate to about page, whatever that I didn't create yet, but it's no big deal. And click save. When I go to my application and refresh, on the demo effect. Anyway, we'll take a look at it later. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but we could actually do it today and look at code. But anyway, so the point is, let's talk about code. And if you have any questions about either Next.js or Strapi or this project that I'm building, definitely just throw them in the chat. But I could, while we wait for questions, I could do like basic overview of the project. So I guess like Cody, do you have any questions or anything that you want to explore or talk about?
Yeah, I have a couple written down from that presentation you gave. So like my first question, I've tried reading through the Strapi license, and if I'm gonna do a self-hosting on like my own DigitalOcean VM, can you explain like how do I give a client access to come into the UI and like come into the dashboard and make changes themselves? Like do you know the licensing around that? Like I thought there's like some.
There is really there is so we have two different Strapi versions. We have the community edition, and then we have our enterprise edition. Community edition is always free for you to use however way you want. And the difference between like the community edition and the enterprise edition is the enterprise edition comes with support from the Strapi team. So if you basically getting paid support, but anything to do with the community edition, you could do and use it as the way you like. And for instance, what you could do, let me go back to, where's my window here? So here's my application. What you could do within your Strapi admin, so you could go into settings. Oh, I see why it's not working. Maybe because I didn't start my applications. That's why it failed the first time. So let me restart my application here. So once, and let me just go back here, refresh. Everything works fine. It's not, yeah. And notice how we now have our about button. The only reason it wasn't showing before is because I didn't start my application. But coming back here in Strapi. So in Strapi, you have two types of users. You have your administration panel users, and you have users for your users permission. So if you want to have, let's say, clients to manage the data in Strapi, you could do it in many ways, but one way, if you go to administration panel users, you could make your client, you could click invite users, or you could just create a user. You could make your client be a super admin of your website, right, of the Strappy dashboard. If you feel like that's too much trust to give them, or maybe you don't want them accidentally to break it, you could create and invite a user, and we have this roles-based permission where you could define a role. Right now, out of the box, you have author, editor, super admin, but you could create a new role. And for now, we only have 2 collection types. But you could create a new role, let's say client, whatever you wanted to call it, and you could define different permissions for what they have access for. Let's say for events, you could check out the settings. You could kind of give them like, if they own the data that they show. So I mean, it's pretty customizable. So we could spend the whole time just talking about creating like users and roles, and you could give them field level kind of permission. So there's certain fields that they can't change and manage. So you have like pretty cool flexibility for your clients to be able to use the admin. There's no any licensing. You just say like you do whatever you do with it. Strappy, that's your thing, community edition. Okay. And so hopefully that helped answer the question.
Yeah, so if I did this for a client and I gave them, let's say, like certain permissions for just like one collection, when they log into the Strappy dashboard, can they only see that collection, or do they see everything but just get errors or warnings?
No, they're not even going to see. Like, so right now, like you see all these extra things I have. Like you could set it up where when they log in to their content manager, they're literally just going to say events, their collection type, and all the other stuff they won't see. Like settings, like they don't need to go into settings. Like, they don't need to change things. So you could only show them the things that they need to see or be able to use.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. You mind if I share my screen like 1 second?
Yeah.
Let me make sure this is sharing. All right, so like this was a little side project I worked on for a friend of my wife, and right now it doesn't have a CMS hooked up. So I kind of want to explain why a CMS can be very useful. When they need changes to this website, for example, if they need to change any of this text, they have to send me an email. I have to read the email. I have to do the changes in Next.js, get that deployed out, send them back the email. They have to confirm, say, oh, you made a mistake, you forgot a period. And that eats up a ton of time. So a CMS, if for anyone watching doesn't really know what a headless CMS is, it allows you to hook in to these various collections that Paul has been showing, and I can give a client permission to go in and change all this stuff as needed. So it gives them a lot of flexibility, and it saves me as a developer a lot of time. I just wanted to point that out just in case there's anyone watching who's like, I don't even know what a headless CMS is. Definitely very useful. All right, you can go back to sharing your screen, Paul.
Yeah, I actually think it'll be kind of cool to you add a headless CMS to that. I think it's pretty awesome. And to me, like there's certain things like I just don't want to do, like changing and updating stuff for clients. Like if I could empower them to do that, to me, that's pretty awesome. And so, Cody like kind of showcased, you could create in Strappy admin where they go in, they only see the things that are allowed to change, they're able to change. But and that's kind of like the way I demonstrated that blog Strappy started template that I showed as the first project. That's kind of what we did. If I wanted to add a blog post, I would go into the content manager on the blogs and add a blog post there. Actually, let me quickly show that to you. Log out. I have multiple accounts log in with GitHub. So for instance, and because I'm only the one that's kind of using this application, I didn't create roles for myself. But again, can I remember my password? But just like Cody was, my goodness, I can't remember my own password. All right, I can't remember my password. I'm not gonna try to remember it, but let me just do it like here in this event. So in events, for instance, let's say the collection type, if the client needed to change the data, they have this visual way of entering here. Let's say if they wanted to change this title, they could do so. And they're able to do it within like the Strappy admin. If they wanted to change the copy, they could use our Markdown editor, but we have like a block style editor. So if someone's not familiar with Markdown, they could do that instead. But basically, your client would be able to update their own information in Strapi admin. But for this event application, I took a slightly different approach. I wanted to keep the Strapi admin more for me, for super admin users. So how do people update their information? I actually created this dashboard for them to be able to update the data that they want. So they could update, and here they're only able to see their events that the owner of, and only update the events that they're able to update. Same thing with like their profile. And what's cool about Strapi here, I'll kind of show you here. So getting started with Strapi out of the box takes 2 minutes, and you could get like so much done without doing any customization. But if we take a look at my Strapi backend on the sources here, I have this middleware here. So you could actually, all the stuff that you see in code, like when we take a look at on the APIs, these are your collection types. So I have our events, my global, my homepage, and every one of these items, like you could add additional, like for instance, right now, if we take a look at this controller here, typically this could be empty, right? But what I needed to do is I needed to create a endpoint, because I wanted to check when someone's creating a new event that there's a slug that already exists. If the slug already exists, like you can't have duplicate slugs. So I created this endpoint called slug exists that did not come out of the box with Strapi, but I was able to create it, and now I have that functionality. So inside my Strapi application, and again, if you have any questions or I'm speaking too fast or going too fast, let me know. If we look under roles and permissions, we take a look at, let's say, public. Under events, notice we have the slug exists, that basically an extra endpoint that I created to allow me to add additional functionality that I want. And speaking of, since we're here, if we in roles, notice we have public or authenticated. So public is anything that people land on your website, you want that information to be publicly available. So if you take a look here, if you look at events, we have find and find one. It's like, hey, I want people to see all the events. They don't need to be authenticated user to see it. And so they don't need to log in to be able to see that. So if we're on the home page, this is coming from that public endpoint, public API. If I go to roles under authenticated, you're able to set permissions to the endpoints that you want to open up. And if you take a look at an event, not only do you want people to be able to find one or find all, but you're able to also create, delete, and update your content. And one of the things is like, well, if I log in on your application, how do I know that I'm only updating or deleting my own data? Well, this is something that you could do through middleware and policies on Strapi to decide, hey, if the user is the owner of this blog post, they could only update their content. And I think I did implement this in code, so I could kind of show this example here. So notice we are under events. I have my middleware here, and I have different middlewares. Like this one is, so let me start at the bottom, is event owner. And so here I created a basic middleware here. And this is what I'm talking about, how Strapi is very customizable. And let me just back up a little bit. This is why I love Strapi. As a front-end developer, I still consider myself as a front-end developer, but taking that leap to full stack development is pretty intimidating. And so with Strapi, you could get started out of the box without having to write this backend code. But you have the option to jump in and start learning about, writing Node.js. In Strapi's case, we use Koa, but it's the same thing basically. And here I created a is event owner. Whenever someone makes a request to our events endpoint, I'm basically like checking, hey, are you the owner of, like, so it checks, is the person who logged in the person that's trying to update the article? If so, and the entry ID exists, it basically says yes. Go ahead and do the things that you need to do. And if you are not the owner, it'll just return like unauthorized, no, you can't access this entry. And so what I love about Strapi is that you could add these additional security policies through middleware. So I learned more about backend development through working with Strapi, because just like when you're building a Node.js application, you need to have, let's say, your routes, you need to have your policies, your middleware. And so this actually, and your controllers, and this is what helped me to kind of better understand. And I have a policy here kind of checking, hey, if someone wants to update their content, are they the owner of their own content? If not, it's like, hey, you're not allowed to perform this action. And if they are the owner, they're able to update. And this is how I kind of protect in my front end here. When I log in as myself, as my user, and I go to my events, what I'm doing here, I'm doing a request to .me endpoint that basically checks, are you the user that's logged in Strapi? And based on that and the JWT token, I'm able to make a call to my events endpoint, and this will only return my items. So if I go here under Content Manager events, if let's say I have like some of these events, let's look at testing create event. And so far the user is me. And let me go remove the user, click save. So this is test and create event. So let's go to my application, refresh. Let me search testing. So notice that I don't see that article anymore because I don't have the permission to view it. So it doesn't even get returned from the API. So there's no accidental way for me to see somebody else's events. Let me just do this. Make mine again, just so you could see it here. And then I'm going to go back, add relation to test user, click save, go back to my project. Let's see, make, yep. And here you go. You now see it, that now it's back under me. I'm the user that logged in. And again, if I go back, just to reiterate, and I remove this, click save, go back to my application again. But it no longer shows up. Make mine. So it's I love that about Strapi, is that you're able to really dive deep and customize the permissions, the security behind it through middleware and policies. Another cool thing about Strapi, like whenever you make a request from the front end, I guess I could show you in code here. Let's see. And then if
by the
go
way, Paul,
ahead.
there's a couple of questions in chat.
Yes, let's do those. Yeah, bring those up because I'm not paying attention to the questions. Go ahead.
Okay. So someone asked, are they planning to add TypeScript support to their ORM? I haven't. Do you guys support TypeScript when you're like messing with the API or anything?
That is an amazing question. And so right now, just to be honest, we started in like converting our whole Strapi application to TypeScript this year. And so right now we're focusing more on the backend implementation and how improve the user TypeScript experience there. But I just recently wrote a blog post, and it's not perfect. And the reason why it's not perfect is because you still kind of have to do a TypeScript workaround, because we're still waiting to create an SDK. So to answer your question, when the SDK comes out, this process is going to be much easier. But for now, I do want to share this for anybody who's interested. You're able to add TypeScript. Oops, I want to go into block. You're able to add TypeScript support. And this article will kind of guide you through the process. I also have the demo project. So I wrote this article called Improve Your Frontend Experience with Strapi Types and TypeScript. I'll share it here in the private chat, and then you could reshare it here. So yes, you have access to your Strapi backend types, and this article will walk you through exactly how to set it up. You could try the demo app, and if you have any questions, you could add comments here in the blog post. It will take us to our forum. So for instance, here's the forum. And what I do, like whenever questions come up or someone sees like there's feedback, I will go ahead and provide some feedback and then update the article accordingly. Because the goal here at Strapi, we do want to make sure that people having a great TypeScript experience on the front end when they're getting their back end response and stuff like that. So I hope that answered your question. So the short answer is, right now we're focusing more on the backend Strapi experience, but you could read this article that'll show you how to get your Strapi types on your front end. And we are working towards the goal of making this process much easier through the development of our SDK. But you could still today use Strapi types if you had to on your front end. Anyway, that was a long-winded response for me. Sorry.
No worries. Oh yeah, and I know there's ways if Strapi can produce open API documentation or JSON, you could usually take that and feed it into an SDK that generates your TypeScript
Yeah,
API,
and
I guess.
and just I was gonna say, in this case, like I'm using AI, but if you're using GraphQL, I hear like it's even easier. But if you follow this process, like you there's a way to import like Strapi types directly to your front end, and you actually get all that stuff like without like you could do the thing that you said, but you could also check out this article as well.
Yeah. So
Like
another
there's
question by
many
the
ways to
same.
skin a cat. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not sure what this question means in their query language and query engine. I'm guessing that's saying like, do you support GraphQL and REST at the same time, or?
So we have like GraphQL and REST, and I used to use GraphQL, stopped because one thing that we now do in Strapi, our REST API allows you to use query syntax to basically only populate the things that you want. So it's the same thing like in GraphQL, you say get this one item, get that, whatever. You're able to do this with REST. And so now there's like no point. And I mean, I'm not saying there's no point. There's actually like some use cases, GraphQL is perfect. But for me, and I'll show you this example here, in Strapi, let me go to source app. Let's go to our event list page here. Let's go to, so we getting our sections here. It's been a while since I work on so many projects. So yeah, here, and this is a very simple example here. But I'm making a request to my page. Actually, I have to, I was going to show you this one. I'm making a request to that events endpoint. And notice how we have this, it may look weird, but we basically able to use this object notation to kind of say, here's the items I want you to populate. And so this image response returns like 100 different, like not 100, but it's like 50 items. It's like your image size, this, and that. And I was like, you know what? All I want to do, I just want you to return a URL and the alternative text. So you're able to define exactly the data that you want. And so this helps you to prevent overfetching and underfetching. And if you want to learn more about it and play with it, on Strapi docs, we have Strapi query builder. And so if you scroll down here, this kind of shows an example of all the things that you could do. So for instance, you're able to build out the query and only get the items that you want. And what the QS library does, by the way, it will basically create this LHS query thing, which I hate because it's so easy to make mistakes. I prefer this object notation. And so kind of like what I'm doing in my application, I'm literally asking for return me the things that you want, and I'm only going to get the data that I want. So I'm never going to overfetch the data that's not necessary for that particular screen. And just to follow up on this question, I think if we take a look in my Next.js application here, I have my loaders. I'm trying to remember, get event details, get me, get public events, get events off. Yeah, so this is for our events. I'm trying to like get events, redirect events. So I'm passing, let me do this because I might be passing. I thought I had the query here, but no, the query is not here. So yeah, let me come back here. So here's we go. We have the get events offloader, and notice how I'm passing the query. And when I'm making a call to the endpoint, passing the query that could define like the items that return. And I'm also using it, like for instance, here in the app, I'm using that query to define the query params to pass to help me make this search engine work, search box work. So let me like go and show you that, what I mean. So if we go to components, I think it's search. Actually, let me go to pages. And I apologize, like I've been working on a whole different project right now. And so I haven't looked at this in a week. So it might take me a minute. So it's dashboard, events, call to action page, I think. Yeah. So if we take a look at this page here, we have our search input. That's that box that gets all the input. And we have our pagination implemented, but on the top here, we have our query that I was kind of showing you. And not only am I asking, only return the things that I need. And if you're more interested, I'll share a blog post that demystifies the whole process. But I'm also able to send different filters that allows me to be like, hey, check the title, does it contain the query? But also like check the description, check the content. And so this is, or check the status. And so basically whenever I type whatever query in the search, this is getting passed to my Strapi application with these filtering params that allow me to do filtering actually on the server. And so here's the cool thing about this. So whenever someone does filtering, like some people, they'll return tons of data to their front end, and then they filter on the front end. And here with the query params I showed you, I'm actually doing all the filtering on the back end. So I'm never like making the front end work more harder than it needs to be. So all of the filtering, like even if we had multiple items of pagination, all of this would be done, on the back end, and it will return the data from the back end. I hope that helps and maybe somehow answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully. Yeah, we got a decent amount. Let's see if we can try to get.
Yeah, let's go through the questions.
Let's see. So this one, WordPress is superior to Strapi. Changed my mind. What's your rebuttal to that?
WordPress is a mono. So the way you think about WordPress and the way you think about Strapi is two different things. So here's WordPress. WordPress is a monolith. It's not a headless CMS. You could use it as a headless CMS, but you need to do a lot of extra work. So your front-end UI and your content is tied in together. So the issue with WordPress, and WordPress is pretty good for a lot of websites, to be honest. But like the issue with WordPress, your backend and your front end is tight and tightly coupled. Where in Strapi, notice that the way we're representing the content here, although you visually see it on the screen, this is front-end agnostic. And so I could use the same Strapi instance to power my Remix application, my Next.js application. Maybe you have a mobile phone application. You could power your mobile application. So right now I'm working on another project, and it's using Remix. And I want to have a desktop app. I want to have a separate mobile app, but I want both of them to be powered with one thing. And if you're using WordPress, they'll be kind of hard to do. And so with my Strapi instance, I'm able to power my desktop app, and the content that's going to serve my desktop is going to be more appropriate for my desktop. My mobile app, that's going to be a PWA app built with Remix, like I want users to have a specific experience. And so my mobile app will be getting different data, and using the query and populate and filtering, it's only going to be the data that's appropriate for the mobile app. And my desktop website or whatever is going to be getting the data that's appropriate to it. And with WordPress, that's kind of hard to do. Like you wouldn't be able to do it because everything is so tightly coupled. So they both serve different paradigms. So if you need to have if you want to build something with PHP, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I know you could use WordPress as headless, but it's a pain in the butt. You could use WordPress. But if you want to use something like Remix, or you want to use Next.js or Astro, or you want to, like, here's another thing. Like if I have a WordPress site, I'll give you one, like prove your point here. I have a WordPress site, and I decided that I want to have a different front end. That's going to be pain in the butt because they're tightly coupled. With Strappy, like I do this all the time. I build an application with Next.js and Strappy. And I was like, you know what? I don't want Next.js in this next project. Or like I want it to be Remix or I want it to be Astro. So instead of having to rebuild both my front end and back end, guess what? I just rebuild my front end and just save so much time and so much easier. But the caveat being here, every project has its own requirements. So pick the tech that's appropriate for what you're doing. Like for instance, if someone said to me, Paul, I'll give you like $100, can you build me a website? I'll be like, yeah, like I'll use WordPress and I'll just set up really quickly and give it to them. But if someone needs more of a custom solution with some more customizations, I think Strappy and your favorite framework is like a really good middle ground, because instead of building everything from scratch, you're only building the front end from scratch, and the back end you're able to customize.
Yeah, and on that point, I do have some comments on that. So, like, I like staying in the JavaScript, TypeScript, Node ecosystem. For me to have to jump back and forth between like learning PHP, if I did decide to use WordPress as a headless CMS, like that's just too much context switching for my brain. Secondly, WordPress has so many themes out there. So if you just need to get a quick site for a client and just buy a $90 theme and it has everything that they need, or like 80% of what they need, like WordPress is pretty good at that too. If you like the idea of just doing that, I don't know. Strappy's headless, so I don't think they have this whole concept of a theme, right?
No, we don't have themes, but what here's the cool part. So Vercel released this thing called like a visual editor, which allows you to kind of look at your front end, click on a thing, and it's going to take you to a headless CMS and show you where you're able to edit that item. So the idea is, if you want to have that type of experience, you could create a plugin for Strappy, and we actually have the Vercel Visual Editor plugin. This particular plugin, because Vercel's Visual Editor is a enterprise feature, so on Strappy it's also enterprise feature, but there's nothing stopping you to create a plugin which allows you to have that similar experience with the framework that you want. But the idea is that we want Strappy to be framework agnostic. So if you wanted to make something specific for your use case, you can, but it's not something that we're adding out of the box, because we don't want to tie people down to like certain frameworks. Like you must use Next.js, or you must use Remix, or you must use whatever.
Okay, cool. Someone asked, is Strappy interface only available in English?
No, you could define, that's a great question. So if you go into settings, you're able to define the language, actually, because I've internalized it, and I can't pronounce the source, whatever. You know what? You get the point. So here right now I have English, but you could add a new locale, and you're able to set whatever language you want. And you could also do multilingual content, where you could have your language in English, and then if someone accesses your your website from France, you could serve them your French version of that website. And to kind of help with that, we have Strappy Marketplace, and I'm just gonna quickly show this here. So there's a company that does auto translations called Local Lazy, and this is what I love about like Local Lazy. Here we go. I love about Strapi is that you could integrate different services via plugins, and if a plugin doesn't exist, you could create it. So for instance, this company Local Lazy, they do translations, and so they created this plugin for Strapi to allow you to easily create translations. So let's say if you have all your content in English, you could use this plugin, push a button, select the language. It'll take all your content in Strapi, translate it, let's say to French, or Chinese, or whatever language you select, and you'll be able to serve, the language appropriate content based on the locale that people ask for it. And then again, you could set your Strapi instance to be in Russian or what have you. So I hope that answers the question.
Cool. Let's see. So we're about an hour in. Let's just see if we can like speed run through these comments to see.
Yeah. Let's just focus on the questions. It'll be good.
If you're connecting your Next.js app to Strappy, is Next.js API routes, or sorry, are Next.js API routes useless then?
So man, Next.js allows you to do things in so many different ways. So like right now, like what you would do is, they're not like, again, it depends what you're building. Like you wouldn't need to use them, because you could now with like server components just query your data from your Strapi endpoint, straight out of your Next.js application. So you basically, when you're using Next.js API routes, you're creating a backend within Next.js, which is perfectly fine. And in our case, instead of me having to create this backend in Next.js, I'm just using Strapi as a done for me solution, if you will, to create my backend. And what I've done before is I have my Next.js application that's using Strapi, but I might want to add some, like, I'll give you an example. I wanted to add a little OpenAI like chatbot thing. And so I created and stored that functionality within my Next.js app. You know what I mean? And expose like endpoints for that functionality from your Next.js application. Again, it really depends what you're doing. So I don't think they're useless. I think is if you're building your own backend if you're just doing full stack straight up with Next.js, yeah, you're either going to be using server actions or API routes. But if you're not building your own backend because you're using Strapi, just make calls to Strapi.
Yeah, there might be like one or two cases where like you don't want to use Strapi for one little feature, so that's when you want to bring in a Next.js API route, but they're not useless. It's just another tool that's at your disposal. Can you explain how to use a rich text editor and render it in the Next.js app? The guide on Strapi docs didn't work for me. Unless you have like a quick explanation for that one.
Yeah, so I'll give you like a quick explanation here. And are you talking about block text, rich text editor, or are you talking about? So we have two. So I'll quickly show you an example here. Let me. So I'm using the Markdown rich text editor, and so in my Next.js application, I go to source components. Rich text. So I basically imported a package called React Markdown. And so I'm getting my response from Strapi and passing that response to my Markdown component. And that will parse that. It will parse the Markdown into JSX. And so that's one easy way to do it. If you're using the new block editor that just got released, you basically, I think it returns a JSON object. So basically you have to create a component in your front-end application that will parse it. And if you want a quick and dirty fix, like if you can't find, because I can't think of any top like solution from top of my mind, what I did from that block editor, I basically selected every option and so I have a response with all those items. And then I took that JSON response to ChatGPT and I said, write me a function that converts this to Markdown or converts this to this, and a great job. So if, and I'm sure there's other packages like I have React Markdown that exist that you could do that, but that would be like the approach to take.
Cool.
That's a good blog post idea, by the way. Thank you. So keep an eye open. Maybe I'll create something to share soon.
Eric Sun says Strapi Cloud is really promising, but the price for Pro, it's $99 US for 1 month. Not good for side projects.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Yeah, 100% agree with that. If you don't have a, sorry, my kitty cat, I'm sorry. She loves love, but I'm like, I can't give you love while I'm on live stream. So go ahead. Hey. So yeah, no, that's a valid point. And so, so just quickly, so Strapi is an open source company. Like the Strapi Community Edition, it's like completely free. So there's only two ways that Strapi makes money. One is we have our Enterprise Edition, which is basically people get paid support. So that's one source of Strapi revenue. And so we, whenever we release features for the Enterprise Edition, we try to move them into our Community Edition to make them completely free. And so we created Strapi Cloud to be another way for us to make an income. And so we decided to take the middle path where one day we want to have a hobby plan, but at the moment we offerable as a company. So we went and the middle route and created the Pro plan. So the Pro plan is for people like if I want to do a side project with Strapi, like use Render, use DigitalOcean, use Heroku. But if I'm building websites for my clients and I don't want to deal with the headaches of like the other day, I tried to deploy something to DigitalOcean and it just kept failing. It took me 4 hours to figure out what the hell was going on. And if I'm working with clients, I'm not a DevOps guy. I don't even want to hire another DevOps guy because like to me it makes no sense. So I would actually get Strappy Cloud because I could pass that cost to the client as part of the service, right? So if you have paying clients or you work at a marketing agency where you're building websites, then it makes sense. But yeah, to your point, right now it's not a good for solo side projects just because the cost of it. So I would say if you're getting paid for your work and don't want to deal with the hassle of DevOps, like, so I'll give you an example. I spent 4 hours trying to fix this thing in DigitalOcean. Let's say I was getting paid $25 an hour. That's 100 whatever, $100 that I just waste, like time wasted. And so to me, paying $100 for not having these headaches, it makes sense, but only if you have paying clients. That would be my caveat there.
Definitely agree with that. So is it possible to use something like AWS Cognito to manage users? I have an existing auth setup, so would like to just use that.
So we do have a couple of different providers in Strapi, and I'm not sure if AWS Cognito provider exists or not. So the short answer is yes, and the longer answer will be if that provider doesn't exist in Strapi, that's something you would have to create yourself. But yes, it is possible. So you're able to create custom providers similar to like plugins in Strapi, like if you want to add additional functionality.
Yeah, I'm guessing Strappy has a way to hook into like the login callback, and then what you'd probably do is make it a call to AWS Cognito using the
Yep.
SDK. You get a token back. You probably store that somewhere in Strappy's cookies or something. So it's probably possible, but
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar to what you described.
are you looking for contribution, I guess, to Strappy open source? Like, do you like people randomly contributing to it?
Yeah, so we have a lot of people contribute to the project. Right now we're working on V5. So a lot of the contribution to V4 project is on a freeze right now. But definitely you could contribute to our docs. You could contribute in many different ways. And also that public, build a public project that I shared, if you wanted to just, work on that together, you could do that as well. But since we're open source, contribution is always welcome. But we're planning to release the alpha version of V5 next quarter. And so right now, not to introduce any new changes or any breaking changes to the current version of Strapi, we currently, for this quarter, have a freeze going on. But after that, yeah, you're definitely able to contribute.
Okay. Let's see. Cody, do you have any experience with any headless CMS to compare with Strapi, or did you always develop the backend part with Next.js? Yeah, I mean, for most of my applications, I typically just use Next.js, and I'll communicate directly with a database using like Drizzle or Prisma. But as I mentioned, if you have a website you're building for a client and the client needs to come in and make changes, I would definitely grab a headless CMS because that'll save you so much time. I don't want to have to build a custom UI for them to come in, log in, modify these records. And giving them a solution like, oh, you just go to GitHub and modify these JSON files, that's not a good solution.
Yeah.
It'll work if they're technically inclined to do that, but you can also tell them to go like edit markdown files or something. But giving them a nice UI that's like already built for you and you can get this spin up in 5 minutes, like I would definitely choose a headless CMS if you have that need.
Yeah, and that is a great point. Like for me, like I'm very lazy creating my own APIs backend, so I just rely on Strapi. But if I were to give like a rule of thumb, if you're going to have content that's managed by other users except you, and you want to make it easy for them, using a headless CMS is definitely going to save you a lot of time. But if it's just a project you're building yourself, you're the owner, you basically understand it, you don't mind making edits like in your database if you had to, like you could just create the whole thing with just Next.
So does a Strapi provide dehydration?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, to be honest. If you want to give a little bit more context. Uh,
Yeah,
Also,
no.
by the way, if there's questions we don't answer really quickly, Strappy does have a Discord, and we do an open office hours there Monday through Friday, 12:30 p.m. CST time. So if you want to make fun of me, you could just show up there. But also great place to ask questions.
Does Strapi collect analytics data like Google Analytics, or do I have to add Google Analytics to it so I can collect data?
Is this like for?
I think this is like tracking who's coming to your site, like what countries are coming to your site from. I don't think that's built in the Strapi, right? You'd have to get a plugin for that.
I think we have some basic analytics, but to be honest, this is the first time somebody asked that question, and so I don't know the answer to this one. I'll ask, but if we do collect analytics, the question would be like, do you have access to it, and what can you access? And if not, like you could create a plugin that handles that for you. But I will get more information on that.
And then he asked the same question again. Kind of, let's see.
And then when you mean like, yeah, like Google Analytics, like, yeah, like there's so many different ways to do this. Like for instance, if it's more like for your front, like, because you got to think of it, you like when you have your Strapi application, that's like your back end, but people are literally interacting with your front end. Like that's what they're visiting. That's where they're getting the data. And so you could integrate Google Analytics on your front end, and you could create some sort of like tracking where whenever something happens, you could have it saved to your Strapi instance and some sort of reporting. But that would be like something you would have to make yourself.
Yeah, so at the very least, you could probably track what API calls are being
Yeah.
made and what users are making those calls from an API standpoint. But yeah, I mean, Strapi's not an analytics company, so I definitely use something like I think
But
Plausible's one or something if you want analytics, like robust analytics.
yeah, and here's one cool thing. Since like every time someone makes a request, it goes through a middleware. You could have a global middleware that takes the response, and then whatever data, like you could create some sort of reporting based on whatever you decide to define and implement. So it's very easy to hook in into Strapi to, kind of track what's happening.
Okay, someone says, how easy is it to transfer my Strapi data in a self-hosted Strapi and move them to the paid Strapi cloud? I'm thinking how easy to move my client into managed by Strapi.
So the answer has two parts. Like, is it a Strapi project that exists that's self-hosted, and you want to move that data to another Strapi project, or are you looking to take data from WordPress and move it to Strapi, which will be a little bit more complex because you got to make sure that the schema that's defined in Strapi and the data. But anyway, so if it's in Strapi, I'll just quickly show you here. I'm not gonna do like a full test here, but let me go to my Strapi application here. So under settings, we have this thing called transfer tokens. You'll be able to create a token test. Let's say 7 days, doesn't matter. Full access. When you create a token, you're going to use this information. I'll show you how. So imagine I have, actually I'm not going to do the transfer function. So notice this is my Strapi cloud project. I have this endpoint, whatever the remote host of your project. Oh goodness, I pasted the wrong thing. So if I have my local project that I do here right now, clear, we have yarn Strapi help transfer. We have this, hold on, yeah, let me see here. Am I in the right oh, I need to go into backend. Yarn, because Strapi help transfer. So we have this transfer command, and this could be like automated, but I'm just going to show you an example. So what you would do is you would say, you would use these flags. So in our case, I'm in my local environment. I would do 2, right? I would do like, I'm not going to do the transfer, but I do yarn, like yarn Strapi transfer 2. And I would, I didn't copy and paste it, but I would provide that. So the short answer is yes. I don't want to eat up too much time. I know we're on time, and Cody's being like super generous right now. but I would copy the URL of the remote Strapi instance. I would paste it inside the Strapi command, and it would ask me for the token. Once I provide the token, click enter. It will automatically take your data from your local instance and transfer it remotely to the cloud. And there is import and export feature as well. Yeah. So import and export feature is to take your data locally, to export it to a backup file, and to re-import it into your local instance. And transfer is used for taking that data and transferring to a remote instance.
Oops. Yeah, so I guess my last question, and we can kind of wrap up the stream.
Yeah, sounds good.
So when you host Strapi on like a VM, does it just use like a SQLite instance, or you guys hook into some type of Postgres database you have to have running as well?
So there's so many ways to do it. You could do like in local development, you use SQLite, but for production, we recommend using either SQL or Postgres. So any SQL-like type of database. So if you doing like, let's say VPS, you will have your Strapi application, and then you'll have an instance of some sort of database running.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I think that wraps up all the questions. I'm sure I skipped one or two, but kind of out of time. So I hope you guys learned something new about CMSs and Strapi. Like I said, I've used it in the past with Paul on this channel. It was really easy to get started and just get like collections and entries kind of added in or removed. Did you have any final remarks, Paul?
No, I was just going to say thank you, Cody, for having me. And thank you all of your awesome folks in your community for joining. And if you want to learn more about what I do personally, you could check out my channel, Coding After 30. And if you're brand new and maybe you're older and you're trying to figure out is it possible to transition careers into development? Like I said, I got my first dev job at 39. I'm 43 now. So keep at it, and work hard.
Cool. Thanks so much. And I need to get you on I want to try doing streaming again, like every Sunday. So I'll probably invite you more just to do some like pair programming again or just build something, have some fun.
Yeah. I also was gonna ask you the same thing, because like I wanted to invite you on my stream, but instead of just asking like coding questions, I wanted to talk about your journey in coding. I think that'll be really awesome and exciting.
Yeah.
So
Hit me up, send me an invite, and I'll be down to do that sometime.
definitely, for sure.
All right, cool. Later, everyone. Thank you so much, Paul. And I'll
Thanks
talk to you
all.
all
Thank you,
soon.
Cody. Bye, everyone. Bye.